It started with two screams, one deep and masculine, coming from a woman's throat, the other high and feminine, coming from a man's. The night before,
So tell me,
he had
Chioma,
asked her,
what exactly
"What do you bring to the
YOU
table?"
bring to the table?
And the ancestors decided to answer for her. He forgot that a woman who wakes before the sun and sleeps after midnight, who keeps your home standing and your peace intact, she isn't bringing something to the table. She is the table. And this is a lesson Tunde is about to learn the hard way. My people, gather close. I brought you another powerful story from Echoes of Wisdom by Crystal. Stay with me. You don't want to miss a second of this. Tunde and Chioma had been married for 3 years. 3 years of what looked from the outside like a perfect marriage. Beautiful home, good jobs, nice car in the compound. The kind of couple people point at in church and say, "See how God is blessing them." But sometimes, what looks perfect on the outside is hiding cracks on the inside. And on one particular Tuesday evening, those cracks were about to split wide open. The house was spotless, as usual. Every surface gleaming, the smell of fresh jollof rice and fried plantain filling every corner of that home. The dining table set perfectly, the way Chioma set it every single evening without being asked, without being thanked, without anyone noticing that it had been set at all. She had woken up that morning at 5:30, while Tunde slept the deep, peaceful sleep of a man who has never once had to think about what was for breakfast. Chioma had already ironed his work clothes, prepared his morning tea, and begun mentally mapping out the week ahead. The generator had been making strange noises. The bathroom sink had been dripping for 2 weeks. She had called 3 different plumbers trying to find one who wouldn't charge them an arm and a leg just to tighten a pipe. She had spoken to the waste collector, rescheduled the electrician, checked that the rent receipt had been filed correctly. These were the things she handled, the invisible things, the things that keep a home running smoothly, like a machine nobody notices until the day it breaks down. So that evening, when Tunde came home from work, loosened his tie, sat down to eat the dinner she had cooked, Chioma thought it would be a simple conversation. "Babe, the generator needs fuel, and I finally got a plumber to agree to come look at the sink this week." Simple, household matters, the kind of thing she brought to him every week. But this time, something was different. Tunde looked up from his phone with irritation written all over his face. "Money, money, money. Chioma, is that all you know how to talk about?" She felt those words like a slap. She looked at her husband confused. "What do you mean? These are things the house needs, Tunde. I'm not asking for designer bags. The generator needs fuel or we won't have light." But Tunde wasn't listening, not really. He dropped his phone on the table, leaned forward, and the frustration that had apparently been building inside him for God knows how long came pouring out like a burst pipe. "Chi, do you know I work from 6 in the morning to 9 at night every single day? I pay the rent, I pay DSTV, electricity, water, internet, food. Every single thing in this house comes from my pocket. Everything." And then he asked the question. He looked his wife dead in the eye. This woman who had been awake since 5:30, who cooked his food, cleaned his home, managed every detail of their domestic life. And he said, "So tell me, Chioma, what exactly do you bring to the table?" Now, let me pause here for a moment. Because when a man asks his wife this question, this particular wife, in this particular home, he is not starting an argument. He is starting a lesson. Chioma sat there, quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet married people recognize. Not the quiet of someone who has nothing to say. The quiet of someone who has decided that words are no longer sufficient. Tunde kept going. "I'm not trying to fight you, Chi. I'm just saying, maybe we should split bills, 50-50. This isn't the 1950s. You are a grown woman. I'm not your father. Let's be equal. Partnership, 50-50. He said all of this while eating the food she cooked, sitting at the table she cleaned, in the home she maintained from ceiling to floor. The irony was completely lost on him. When he finished his speech, expecting maybe an argument, maybe tears, Chioma simply stood up, looked at him with those calm, unreadable eyes and said, "Okay, just like that. Okay, 50-50. I'll get a job tomorrow." Then she walked to the bedroom. Tunde sat there, actually feeling satisfied with himself. He picked up his phone, went back to scrolling and muttered, "Finally, some sense." "Oh, my dear Tunde, you poor, spectacular, clueless man. You have absolutely no idea what storm you just called down upon yourself." That night, while Tunde slept the peaceful sleep of the ignorant, Chioma sat in the living room with a notebook, a calculator, and a determination that could move mountains. Her best friend Ngozi video called, having somehow already heard, because best friends always somehow already know. And the first words out of her mouth were, "He said what? This man that you cook 3 meals a day for? The one whose boxers you iron? Chi, please tell me you at least threw something." But Chioma wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was planning. "I didn't throw anything, Ngozi. I said okay. Watch what I do next." And what she did was beautiful in its precision. She opened her notebook and began documenting every single thing she did in that house. Every single thing. Let me tell you what a typical day in Chioma's life looked like, because this is important. This is what Tunde called just staying at home. 5:30 in the morning, Chioma's alarm goes off. Tunde is still asleep, snoring peacefully, dead to the world. By 6 o'clock, she is in the kitchen, kettle on, eggs frying, bread toasting, fruit sliced, and while the eggs cook, she is simultaneously ironing his work shirt. Not just any shirt, but the specific ones he likes for important meetings, the delicate ones that can't go in the washing machine. She irons them by hand, making sure every crease is perfect, because she knows that if his shirt isn't right, his whole day feels off. She knows this because she pays attention. She has always paid attention. By 7 o'clock, she is scrubbing the toilet. Yes, scrubbing the toilet, because somehow, mysteriously, even though only 2 adults live in this house, that toilet needs attention every single day. By 9 o'clock, she is on the phone with the electricity company. Have you ever called NEPA customer service? It is a special kind of torture. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that. Wait on hold for 45 minutes listening to a robot tell you your call is important while you slowly lose your mind. But someone has to do it, and that someone is always Chioma. By 10 o'clock, she is at the market. And my people, the market is a battlefield. The tomato seller opens at 3,000 naira of 4 tomatoes. 3,000. Chioma negotiates. "Auntie, you want to kill me. 800. Back and forth, every single item on that list. The tomatoes, the peppers, the onions, the meat, the fish, the vegetables. A full negotiation for every single thing. By the time she leaves that market, she has spent more mental energy than most boardroom meetings require, and her arms are aching from the bags. By 12:30, she is home. No time to rest. Real cooking begins. Washing, cutting, blending, seasoning, frying. By 2 o'clock, she has been on her feet for 8.5 hours, and the day is nowhere near over. 2:30, the plumber calls back. 3 o'clock, laundry. 4 o'clock, folding, ironing. 5 o'clock, pantry reorganized. 5:30, dinner started. Soup, pounded yam, the kind that makes your arms burn. 6:30, cleaning up from both meals. And by the time she finally sits down, her brain is still running. Did she pay the waste collector? Is there enough rice? When did they last change the bed sheets? Should she call Tunde's Mona this weekend? They're running low on toilet paper. The hallway bulb is flickering. Always adding to the list. Never an empty list. And at 9 o'clock, when Tunde walks through that door tired from his day, he sees his wife sitting on the couch and thinks, she's been home all day, just relaxing. He doesn't see the 15 hours of work that came before that moment. He just sees her sitting down and wonders what she does all day. The next morning, Tunde shuffled out of the bedroom in his boxers, expecting a normal morning, and stopped dead in his tracks. Because there was his wife. Sharp black blazer, hair slicked back, makeup flawless, looking like she was about to take over a corporation. "Chi, where are you going?" "Job interview." He laughed nervously. "Wait, you're serious?" She was not smiling. She handed him a printed spreadsheet, color-coded, pie charts, graphs, a complete breakdown of every single household expense. "Here is the breakdown, babe. Rent, food, utilities, water, electricity, waste disposal, transportation, toiletries, household supplies. Your half comes to 127,000 naira per month. Mine too. I'll start paying once I get the job." But she wasn't finished. She walked to the living room wall where she had posted, my people, she had posted on the actual wall, a massive chore chart. "Mondays and Wednesdays, you cook. Tuesdays and Thursdays, me. Weekends, we alternate. Bathroom cleaning is split. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is you. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is me. Sundays, we both rest because even God rested on the seventh day." Tunde's mouth was hanging open. "Bathroom? I have to clean the bathroom?" Chioma smiled sweetly. "Oh, and the toilet has been running for 2 weeks. I've been jiggling the handle every time anyone uses it. Your turn now. Partnership, baby, 50-50. She kissed him on the cheek and walked out of that house like the queen she absolutely was. Tunde stood there in his boxers holding a color-coded spreadsheet and whispered to himself, "Waiting I just start." Now, that same afternoon, Chioma was at the market going through her routine, but her heart was still heavy, still carrying those words. What do you bring to the table? 3 years of marriage, and he thought she contributed nothing. As she stood at the vegetable stall, lost in thought, an old woman appeared beside her. Not walked up, appeared, like she materialized from the air itself. Wrapper tied perfectly, head wrap sitting like a crown, and eyes that had seen everything this world has ever done. She looked at Chioma and said, "Pikin, why your face long like Lekki Epe Expressway?" Chioma found herself opening up to this stranger who called herself Mama Africa. She told her everything. Mama Africa listened, nodding slowly, then reached into an ancient leather bag and produced 2 identical brass bracelets, carved with symbols Chioma didn't recognize, symbols that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. "Wear this one, give your husband the other." Chioma stepped back. "Mama, I don't do juju. I'm a Christian woman." Mama Africa laughed, warm, full, from somewhere deep. "This is not juju, my pikin. This is wisdom. Sometimes the only way to truly see someone is to walk in their shoes, to live their reality. Take it. It won't cost you anything." Chioma hesitated. She took the bracelets. When she looked up to ask more questions, Mama Africa was gone, vanished into the crowd like smoke, like she had never been there at all. That evening, Chioma found Tunde on the couch, shouting at a football match like it owed him money. "I got you something, babe." He barely looked at it, slipped the bracelet onto his wrist, eyes still glued to the screen. "Thanks. Ah, goal!" Chioma put on her own bracelet. The moment she did, both bracelets began glowing, faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Thunder rumbled outside, even though the sky had been perfectly clear. Tunde muttered, "Rain is coming. You close the windows." And then there was a flash of light, blinding, all-consuming, the kind that comes before everything changes. The next morning, the alarm went off at 5:30. A hand reached out to silence it, but the hand was too large, too rough. Chioma sat up and looked at her hands, and her breath stopped completely. These were Tunde's hands. She touched her face and felt stubble. She looked down. She ran to the mirror, and staring back at her was her husband's face. She was in Tunde's body. The scream woke Tunde. He opened his mouth to complain, and out came a voice that was high and soft and completely, unmistakably feminine. He looked at his hands, small fingers, pink nail polish. He touched his face. Smooth. He looked down and found things that absolutely should not have been there. He scrambled to the mirror. Chioma's face stared back at him. They stood side by side. Chioma in Tunde's body, Tunde in Chioma's body, both of them trying to make their brains accept what their eyes were showing them. And then, simultaneously, they both screamed so loud, the neighbors thought someone was being murdered. They spent an hour trying to pull the bracelets off. They would not move, would not budge, would not even scratch. Then, Tunde's phone rang. His boss, Tunde, morning briefing in 30 minutes. Don't be late. Chioma stared at that phone in pure horror. I have to go to your job? Meanwhile, Tunde picked up Chioma's phone and scrolled through the daily to-do list. Market, cook, plumber, laundry, ironing, bathroom, pantry restock, dinner. His eyes went wide. This is all for today? Yes, said Chioma, already looking for his work tie. And every day? And every day. Tunde put the phone down very slowly, like a man who has just read his own court sentence. And so began the most educational week of both of their lives. Let us start with Chioma first, because this is where the story gets really sweet. Chioma rushed to get dressed in Tunde's work clothes. Simple enough. Or so she thought. She got to the tie and stopped completely. She had watched him knot that tie 1,000 mornings. She had seen it done right in front of her face for 3 years straight. She could not do it. 15 minutes, 3 YouTube videos, 1 near breakdown, before that tie finally sat correctly on her, on Tunde's collar. Meanwhile, across the hallway, Tunde stood in the bathroom in Chioma's body and faced his very first logistical crisis of the day. He had to sit down to pee. He stood there staring at that toilet for a full minute, processing this information like a man receiving news he was not emotionally prepared for. Then he sat down, stood back up, sat down again, trying to make peace with something that his entire 32 years of life had absolutely not prepared him for. The simple physics of being in a woman's body were already dismantling him, and he hadn't even left the house yet. Chioma straightened the tie one final time, picked up Tunde's work bag, looked at herself in the mirror, took one long breath, and walked out of that door terrified but absolutely determined. Tunde watched her leave, then looked back at the toilet, then at the overwhelming to-do list on her phone. He took a very deep breath. Tunde stood in the middle of that house, the house he had lived in but apparently had never truly seen, and wondered where on earth to even begin. The list on Chioma's phone said market first. Okay, market. How hard could it be? You go, you buy things, you come back. Simple. Oh, Tunde. Sweet, naive, completely unprepared Tunde. You are about to learn. He got dressed, and on his way out, he noticed Chioma's makeup spread across the counter. Tubes and brushes and pencils and instruments whose names he had never learnt despite seeing them every morning of their marriage. He picked up an eyeliner pencil, looked at it, thought, how hard can this be? He poked himself directly in the eye. He yelped, dropped the pencil, stood there with one eye streaming, wondering who on earth designed such a device and why women voluntarily used it every morning before the sun was even fully up. But that was only the beginning of Tunde's education, because as he stood there rubbing his watering eye, trying to gather himself, he felt something else. A dull ache, low in his abdomen. Not sharp, just present, persistent, like a quiet warning he didn't yet understand. He ignored it, grabbed Chioma's shopping bags, the same bags he had always made fun of her for carrying everywhere, and headed to the market. The moment Tunde stepped into that market, he was overwhelmed. People everywhere, shouting, pushing, haggling, the smell of fresh fish and ripe plantain and spices all hitting him at once. A tomato seller spotted him immediately. Sister, come buy fresh tomato. He walked over. How much? For you, 3,000 naira. Tunde nearly left his body. 3,000 for these tomatoes? Auntie, are they imported? Did they fly business class to get here? She didn't blink, came down to 2.8. He pushed to 800. They argued for 15 solid minutes over tomatoes. Just tomatoes. And there were 20 more items on the list. He was swindled by one seller, tried to shortchange by another. He bought the wrong pepper twice. He stood in front of the fish section for 8 minutes, unable to identify what he was looking at. A small child, maybe 7 years old, watched him struggling and offered to help. He accepted, gratefully, without shame. 2.5 hours later, he staggered out of that market with bags so heavy his arms were shaking, his feet were burning, and his confidence was completely destroyed. And that's when the cramps arrived. Not the dull ache from earlier. That was just the opening act. This was the full performance. The pain that hit him on that road was so sharp, so sudden, so absolutely without mercy. He doubled over right there on the street, groceries dropping everywhere, his face twisted, his knees nearly buckling. He genuinely, sincerely believed he was dying. He called Chioma in full panic. "Chioma, something is wrong. My stomach, there is pain. I need a hospital. I think I'm dying." Chioma, sitting calmly at Tunde's desk, trying to look professional, listened to all of this and said, "Babe, relax. That's your period." Silence so deep you could hear the market noise behind him. "My what?" "Your period. You are in my body, so you experience everything. The cramps, the bloating, the mood swings, all of it." Another silence. "Every month?" "Every month." "For how long?" 5 to 7 days. My people, Tunde made a sound on that road that had never been made by a human being before. Somewhere between a gasp and a whimper and a prayer. And then he whispered, 5 to 7 days of this, and you women are still out here walking around, functioning, cooking, going to market. How? How? Chioma calmly told him where the sanitary pads were. Tunde stood outside the pharmacy for 10 minutes gathering courage. When he finally went in, he approached the counter and said in the quietest voice he had ever used in his adult life, "Please, I need the thing, the women's thing, the pad." The pharmacist, cheerful, professional, smiled and said, "What type? Regular or heavy flow? Wings or no wings? Day pad or night pad? Scented or unscented?" Tunde stared at her. "The pad has wings?" "Yes." "It can fly?" "No, sir, the wings are the..." "What is heavy flow? What does that mean? How do I know which one?" He bought 3 different types because he could not determine which one applied to his situation, and he was not willing to come back. At home, he spent 20 minutes trying to figure out how to use one. He stuck the first one backwards, adhesive on the wrong side. Had to peel it off and try again. When he finally got it positioned correctly, he stood up and walked across the room. Like a penguin. A very confused, very uncomfortable penguin. How do women walk with this thing? How do you sit? This is not a pad, this is a mattress. How is this comfortable? This is punishment. But there was no time to process any of this because the food still needed to be cooked. Tunde stood in front of the ingredients he had bought from the market and stared at them like they had personally offended him. Rice, tomatoes, peppers, onions, chicken. Jollof rice. Chioma made this at least 3 times a week. She made it look effortless, like breathing. He put the rice in the pot, added water, added the blended tomatoes and pepper, put it on the fire, went to answer the plumber's call, 15 minutes, came back. Smoke. Not a small amount of smoke. A committed, enthusiastic, filling the entire kitchen amount of smoke. The rice had not just burnt, it had bonded with the bottom of that pot like they had made a permanent agreement. Black, solid, gone. He opened all the windows. He grabbed the kitchen towel and started fanning desperately, the smoke detector screaming above him like it was personally offended, the neighbors surely watching from their windows, the pot sitting there on the stove completely unrepentant. What happened? I was gone for 15 minutes. How? He had to start over. He scraped out the burnt offering, washed the pot, opened YouTube, typed, "How to cook jollof rice Nigerian." The video said, "First, parboil the rice." Tunde stopped. What is parboil? He watched the video. You boil the rice halfway, drain it, then cook it again in the sauce. Who knew? Not Tunde. He had eaten this rice hundreds of times and had never once wondered how it arrived on his plate. He started again, step by step, pausing the video every 30 seconds, rewinding, rewatching. But the cramps were getting worse. Every few minutes, a wave of pain would grip his abdomen and he would have to stop, hold the counter, breathe. At one point, the pain was so bad he sat down on the kitchen floor and he started crying. Not just from the pain, but from the realization hitting him like cold water that Chioma went through this every single month. This exact pain, this same cramping every month, while cooking, while cleaning, while shopping, while managing every detail of their home. And she had never once told him she was in pain. She had never asked him to parry more because she was hurting. She had just done everything, through the pain, through the exhaustion, through all of it, silently, without complaint, without recognition. By the time the rice was done, it was 3:30 in the afternoon. Nearly 4 hours for one pot of rice. The kitchen looked like something had happened in it. Oil on the counter, tomato stains on the wall, every pot and spoon he owned, used and waiting to be washed. He tasted the rice. It was barely edible. And he thought about every single time he had pushed his plate slightly to one side and said, "Chi, this rice is a bit too soft today." He put the spoon down. He sat on the kitchen floor again. This time he didn't cry. He just sat there and looked at the ceiling and thought about what kind of man he had been. Meanwhile, across town, Chioma's own lesson was quietly finding her too. She had already found Tunde's desk, sat down, started the day, hoping nobody looked too closely, though really there was nothing to suspect. She was wearing his face perfectly. She opened his calendar, meeting in 15 minutes, financial strategy briefing. She opened his documents, scanning quickly. She was intelligent, she was organized, she understood the project, she had ideas. She walked into that meeting ready. The meeting started. She tried to contribute a point. A colleague cut her off. "Let me just finish my thought first." She waited, tried again a few minutes later. Another colleague talked right over her, didn't even pause. "We know, Tunde. Anyway, as I was saying," her point vanished into the air like it had never been spoken. Chioma sat there, stunned. This was what Tunde experienced, showing up with ideas and having them ignored, coming prepared and being spoken over. She had always thought, go to work, sit at a desk, attend meetings. How hard could it be? But this was hard, not the physical hard of housework, a different kind of hard. The mental and emotional hard of needing to prove yourself again and again in a room that doesn't always want to hear you. The subtle exhaustion of office politics, the weight of being watched and judged and interrupted and expected to smile through all of it. After the meeting, she sat back at his desk and opened the Henderson report, a file his boss had mentioned needing urgently. She opened it expecting something routine. 37 pages. Detailed financial analysis, market research, strategic recommendations that were genuinely and impressively brilliant. Her husband, who she had sometimes privately thought just shuffled papers around all day, had produced this excellent, careful, intelligent work. The boss called her in. "Excellent work on this, Tunde. I'm recommending you for senior manager." She felt a surge of unexpected pride for a man who wasn't even in his own body. Walking out, a colleague muttered just loud enough, "Must be nice. Some of us actually work for our promotions." Chioma stopped, turned. The colleague was already walking away. She stood there with Tunde's hands balling into fists, finally understanding something she had never considered. He carried this every day, this pressure, this judgment, this constant need to prove his worth. And he came home and said, "I'm tired." And she had thought, tired from what exactly? Sitting in a chair? At lunchtime, she found herself in the bathroom, looking at her reflection, Tunde's reflection, and feeling the weight of something she had never carried before. The responsibility of being the one the whole household depended on financially. One wrong move, one bad quarter, one difficult boss, and everything, the rent, the food, the generator fuel, the plumber, all of it could shake. He protected her from this stress every single day. He swallowed it silently because he was the man, and men provide, and men don't complain, and men endure. That was the rule, the unspoken, unquestioned, crushing rule. And she had never once, not once in 3 years, sat across from him and said, "Tell me what it's really like out there. Tell me what you carry. I want to know." That evening, they met at the front door at almost exactly the same moment. They looked at each other, and no words were needed. They both looked utterly, completely, honestly destroyed. They walked to the sofa and collapsed side by side, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence said everything. Later that night, lying in bed, Tunde spoke first, quietly, like a confession. "Chi, the market bags nearly took my arms off. The cramps dropped me on the road in front of strangers. I stuck the pad on backwards. I burned the rice so badly, the pot may never recover. I cried on the kitchen floor, and I wasn't even sure what I was crying about anymore. I scrubbed the toilet on my hands and knees while my body was screaming. 6 hours of work, and the house still wasn't fully clean. And this is what you do every day, every single day, while bleeding, while your body is fighting you from the inside, and you still smile when I walk through that door?" Chioma was quiet for a long moment. Then, in his low, deep voice, which still sounded strange coming from her, she said, "Your colleague told me I didn't deserve the promotion. Nobody heard me in that meeting. Not once. The pressure of every decision being watched, one mistake, one bad report, and everything we have could shake. And that Henderson report, Tunde, it's brilliant, genuinely brilliant. And I didn't know because I never asked. In 3 years, I never once sat down and asked you to tell me about your work, what it costs you, what it feels like. I just assumed it was fine because the money was coming." They looked at each other in the dark. And despite everything, the exhaustion, the confusion, the strange wrongness of being in each other's bodies, they laughed, tired, broken, real. And then Tunde's eyes filled with tears. "Your body is in constant pain, Chi. Your back, your knees, and then every month, on top of everything, your body bleeds and cramps, and your emotions go to war with you. And you still get up at 5:30. You still cook. You still clean. You still smile. How? How are you doing this?" "And you," Chioma said, "you are carrying the world out there, fighting battles I knew absolutely nothing about, coming home with all of that swallowed down, packed away, hidden, because you are supposed to be strong. You do all of it for us, and I took every single bit of it for granted." Tunde's voice cracked completely. "Chi, when I asked you what you bring to the table, I was so blind, so breathtakingly, embarrassingly blind. You bring everything. You bring the table itself, the food on it, the plates, the cups, the peace, the order, the love that fills this home. You bring everything. And every month, you do it while your body is at war with itself. And I called it nothing. I called it just staying at home." He stopped, swallowed. "I am so sorry." Chioma held his hand. "And I'm sorry too. You are not just a paycheck. You are not just the bill payer. You are fighting for us every single day. And I never saw it. I never said thank you." They held each other in the dark, finally understanding each other's souls. The next morning, they went to the market together, searching every store, every row, every corner. They found her exactly where Chioma had first seen her, sitting in the same spot, selling vegetables, waiting, like she had known all along that they would come back. That ancient smile spread across her face. "Ah, the pikin them don't come back." They begged her to reverse it. "Please, Mama, we understand now. We've learnt, please." Mama Africa shook her head gently. "I know change you. The bracelet only showed you what you were refusing to see. The real change, she tapped her chest. That one happens here first. Always here first. She looked at Tunde. You see am now? You see say your wife no dey just stay home? Tunde nodded, crying openly, not caring who saw. She's a chef, Mama, a negotiator, an accountant, a cleaner, a manager, a planner. She is the CEO of our home, and every month she does all of it while her body bleeds and cramps, and she never once complained. And I called it nothing. I called it just staying at home. Mama Africa turned to Chioma. And you, my pikin, you see say your husband no be just money machine. He fights battles every day, Mama. He carries pressure I never imagined. He produces brilliant work while people try to tear him down. He does it all to give us a good life, and I never appreciated it. I never even asked. Mama Africa smiled, deep and satisfied, the smile of someone who has seen this story play out across generations and never gets tired of watching it resolve. Marriage no be 50-50. She held up both hands, all 10 fingers spread wide. Now 100. Both of una bring everything. Not half, not your part and my part, everything. Different work, different label, same value, same worth, same love. She touched both bracelets gently. They glowed warm, like afternoon sunlight on skin. But hear me well. Appreciation no be one-time thing, na everyday work. Wake up tomorrow and thank each other, and the next day and the next, for as long as this life lasts. The light flashed, brilliant and blinding. When it faded, they were back. Chioma in her own body, Tunde in his own body. They stood in that market, touching their own faces, overwhelmed with relief, overwhelmed with gratitude, overwhelmed with everything they now carried that they hadn't carried before, the knowing, the real, lived, undeniable knowing. They held each other right there, among the tomatoes and the fish and the shouting vendors and the chaos of that market, holding on like people who had almost lost something precious without realizing how precious it was. When they turned to thank Mama Africa, she was gone, vanished, like a spirit who had completed her assignment and moved on to the next one. Life resumed, but everything was different. The next morning, Chioma went to the kitchen and Tunde appeared in the doorway, wearing her apron, the pink one with the flowers she'd had since before they were married. She looked at him. "What are you doing?" He smiled. "Partnership. What are we making?" She laughed. "We? You think I'm going to forget how that jollof rice humbled me? How it burned me? How it broke me on that kitchen floor and made me cry? Teach me, Chef Chi. I'm serious. I'm ready to learn." He tied that apron, stood beside her at the stove, and so began their new life. You would see them in the evenings, cooking together. Tunde still burning things sometimes, both of them laughing when he did because the laughter was no longer at anyone's expense. You would see him at the market on Saturday mornings, haggling with a confidence that impressed even the vendors. "Oga, you have learned to. Sister Chi trained you well." He would grin and say, "I had a very good teacher." You would see him scrubbing the toilet, still making the face, still muttering under his breath, but doing it, because he knew now what it meant to leave it for someone else. You would see him, on the days the cramps came, bringing Chioma a hot water bottle without being asked, rubbing her back, placing chocolate on the table quietly, saying, "I know, babe. I know exactly how it feels. Rest. I'll handle dinner." And she would look at him with a love so specific it had no name. Because he wasn't saying words. He had lived it. He actually knew. You would see Chioma asking Tunde about his day, really asking, pulling her legs up on the sofa and facing him and saying, "Tell me," and listening, truly listening, not waiting for her turn to speak, rubbing his shoulders when he came home carrying invisible weight, saying, "I'm proud of you. That report was brilliant. You deserve everything that's coming." And he would look at her like a man who has just been given water after a very long drought. Months later, they were at a family gathering when Tunde's younger brother, barely 2 years into his own relationship, leaned back in his chair and began, casually, confidently. "I'm just saying, what does she even bring to the—" Tunde cut him off. Sharp, immediate. The entire table went silent. Do not finish that sentence." His brother blinked. I'm just... I said that. I asked that question once. I looked my wife in the face and asked her what she brings to the table. And I want you to know, the lesson that followed is one I will carry in my bones for the rest of my life. Chioma squeezed his hand. She added quietly, and the whole table leaned in to hear her. The most valuable things in any relationship are invisible. The mental load, the emotional labor, the daily acts of love that nobody sees, nobody records, nobody pays for. Those things are only invisible until they stop, until the person carrying them finally puts them down. And then suddenly, everybody notices. Tunde looked at his brother and said, "Marriage is not 50-50. It's 100-100. Both people bringing everything. Different things, different forms, different labor, but the same value. And before you ever ask what someone brings to the table, make sure you can even see the table. Make sure you can see the work that goes into building it, setting it, maintaining it, making it a place where love can actually gather and stay. Because if you can't see all of that, you are asking the wrong question entirely."
My people, this is the story of Tunde and Chioma. Two people who thought they knew each other, who thought they understood what their marriage was, who had been living under the same roof, sleeping in the same bed, eating at the same table, and had never truly seen each other. It took living each other's lives to finally look, and what they saw changed everything. The question is never, what do you bring to the table? The question is, am I seeing everything you bring? Am I honoring it? Am I grateful for it? Am I appreciating the visible and the invisible, the paid and the unpaid, the obvious and the quiet? Because in any partnership worth having, both people are bringing everything. Different things, different labor, different sacrifices, but all of it essential, all of it valuable, all of it deserving of love, respect, and the simple, powerful gift of being seen. See your partner. Really see them. See the work that makes your life possible. See the sacrifices you benefit from without knowing. See the love hidden inside 1,000 small actions you might be walking past every single day. And then say thank you. Every day. Mean it every day. Because marriage is not a transaction. It is not 50-50. It is all of you and all of me. Everything we both bring to this table, this home, this life, together. This has been What Do You Bring to the Table from Echoes of Wisdom by Crystal. May we all learn to see what has always been there before the ancestors have to teach us the hard way. And one last thing, Mama Africa is still out there, somewhere in that market, with her bracelets, waiting for the next person who needs this lesson. Don't let it be you. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and drop a comment. Who do you think had it harder, Tunde or Chioma? And which one are you in your house? Be honest.